Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Plant Free MD podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Anthony Chaffee, and today I have a very special returning guest, Mr. Ben Azadi, who absolute pleasure to talk to again. Ben, thank you so much for coming out.
Anthony, thanks for bringing me back, brother. I love the work you're doing. I'm grateful for our friendship. And round two, we're going to have some fun today.
Absolutely. So Ben has just come out with a new book, or that's coming out, and we'll be talking about it now. This is not just a keto book, it's not a carnivore book, it's not a niche book. This is something that's designed to hit the masses and to talk to people, talk to the majority of people that are eating the standard American diet, the standard European diet, the standard Australian diet, and let them know why maybe switching it up and thinking about these other methods of eating are a good idea, maybe not being so afraid of meat and things like that. So Ben, please, if you for people who haven't come across you, maybe give a bit of an introduction and let us know about your book.
Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy to. So I've been in the health space now for 17 years. I entered the health space in 2008 after my own personal experience of being obese physically and mentally for 20 plus years of my life, following that good old standard American diet. As a kid, my mom worked at two Kentucky Fried Chickens, so she brought me home good old fried chicken and our favorite seed oils. And I lived a very unhealthy lifestyle as a kid, really, really unhealthy. So I had food addiction, drug addiction, video game addiction, a lot of addictions, and I was physically obese. So in 2008, I went through this incredible transformation where I lost 80 pounds in 9 months, completely
Nice.
transformed my physical appearance, but my mental health improved tremendously. A lot of those suicidal thoughts I had started to go away, and they're completely gone now. And it really started with the food that I ate. I just started to eat real food, move my body. It was not necessarily keto or carnivore in the beginning. It sort of evolved into a keto carnivore approach over the years. So I've been in the space now for those 17 years. I've worked with close to 10,000 people that I've taken through my academy and worked one-on-one as well. And I started to fall in love with keto and fasting back in 2013. At this time, I was operating a CrossFit gym here in Miami. I owned a CrossFit gym, and I was transitioning from a plant-based diet, the opposite of what we teach now, which is a vegan diet. And it really did a lot of harm to my health. It wrecked my hormones. It was taking me so long to recover in between workouts. So I did a plant-based diet strict for 15 months in 2013. And then I started to think, I don't feel great. Let me do some lab work to verify how I feel. And it showed why I didn't feel so great. Hormones were wonky, low testosterone, just I was awful. I was inflamed. So then I started to do some research and I started to get into ketosis and fasting. And I applied both keto and fasting. It really took my health to a whole another level. And that's where I started to really teach about keto. And I created Keto Kamp, Camp with the K, and created all these programs. And since then, I've written some books along the way. And recently, I wanted to write a book on the metabolism. And Anthony, there were three key studies that really convinced me to write a book on the metabolism for the masses. The first one was actually a 2016 study from the Mayo Clinic, which was these researchers set out to determine how many Americans live what they consider an active, healthy lifestyle. And they based it off of four criteria. The first criteria was that they don't smoke cigarettes. The second criteria was that they exercise moderate to vigorous exercise for at least 150 minutes total per week. The third criteria was that they eat what they consider a healthy diet, which in this scenario is just a minimally processed diet. And the fourth criteria was if they're a female, they have a body fat percentage under 30% and male under 20%. And the study concluded showing that only 2.7% of Americans fit that criteria, dude.
Wow.
That's it. You're probably not surprised because you see it, but dude, that is a very small percentage. And this is before COVID. This is before all the lockdowns and what we've seen the last 5 or 6 years. And then, of course, in 2018, this is a study you've referenced, the University of North Carolina Chapel Hill study showing around 88% of American adults are what they consider metabolically unhealthy. And then in 2022, which is a more recent study, showed it's closer to 93%. So after seeing these studies and actually seeing it with my eyes living in the US, I decided, all right, I want to write a book on the metabolism. I want to show people why it's not healthy to be stuck burning sugar and why a lot of these metabolic issues, including diabetes, prediabetes, PCOS, and eventually things like cancer, heart disease, these individuals are sugar burners. They're stuck burning sugar. They forgot how to burn fat. And that's a big problem. So the book talks about the main causes to metabolic dysfunction. It starts out with the first half going into why burning sugar as your only fuel source is not a good idea, why and how environmental toxins disrupt your your metabolism, a chapter on poor circadian rhythm. So it's all about the causes, and then the second half it's about the solutions, and then it's tied together in a 30-day protocol. And you mentioned it's not necessarily a keto book or a carnivore book, but I do emphasize the importance of eating animal protein in the book. And there is a chapter on keto in the book because I think it's so important. But dude, that's why I wrote it. And I'm excited. The book comes out May 13th. We have Anthony's favorite nightshade on the cover, which is a nice
Smashed
capsaicin red pepper here, but it's smashed, right? So you could leave that to your interpretation. Am I saying to eat it? Am I saying to destroy it? I don't know. Let's see. You got to read the book.
on it. Yeah. Well, it's awesome, man. I mean, I think it's great that you're doing something that is applying this and making these arguments to people to that not preaching to the choir and things like that. Because people that you know it is interesting making these sorts of like, oh, hey, this is why I do carnivore, and here's some of the evidence and things like that. And there's some really good books like that, and they can help people think about the evidence and why this might be a good idea for them. But it is really important to sort of meet people where they're at as well. And some people are not ready to make that leap. I mean, even to go like full ketogenic or something like that, but even just getting people off processed foods, even getting, even just increasing the amount of meat, understanding that it's not bad for you, and that it is quite necessary. That's going to make a huge impact for a lot of people, and probably the majority of people, because the majority of people probably aren't quite ready to make that
Yeah.
full leap. And I even talked to people. I spoke to someone the other day that was saying that he was really interested in carnivore, but he's like, it's just like getting in my head of just eating meat, salt, and water. It's not possible for me to do that for a lot of different reasons. After talking to him for a while, he then came around like, okay, screw it, I'm doing it. But like, you can't have that one-on-one sort of conversation with the entire world. And so a lot of people just have to be in, so you have to try to make improvements for everybody where they're at. Even just people that are plant-based and thinking they're doing right, but then maybe think like, well, actually, like, why aren't I as healthy as I should be? Why do I still have these metabolic issues? Why can't I lose the weight unless I starve myself and really don't get any calories and then look emaciated and malnourished? Well, it could just be that you're not giving your body the nutrients it needs, and you can just sort of help steer people a slightly different way. So it's great that this sort of book is coming out.
Thank you. Yeah, you well said. And yeah, I want the book to be a gateway to carnivore, right? That is the goal, right? I am predominantly carnivore myself. I love eating meat. I feel really good. It's something I teach a lot of my students to do. But to your point, most people are going to feel there's going to be some resistance if we tell them to go from eating a standard American diet to just eating meat. So I want this to kind of be that gateway where they start to get more metabolically healthy. They do use keto, and we do use keto in the book as part of the 30-day plan. And then what's next, right? And that's usually the carnivore approach. It's usually the what we've seen over the years: standard American diet, more paleo, low carb, keto, and then you end up at carnivore, right? So I want to help with that sort of four-step process, especially for the masses. But with that being said, like I know a lot of your audience, viewers and listeners are already carnivore or keto. You'll still get a lot from the book, right? I go in deep into the science of why high levels of insulin destroys your body, high levels of A1C. So we get into the mechanisms at play here. It's a great book to gift to somebody who you want to get into the low carb, keto, eventually carnivore lifestyle. So there's a lot to take from it, whether you're a beginner or somebody who's advanced. There's a 30-day protocol at the end of the book, and I put two protocols together. Somebody who's brand new, standard American diet, here's what you do for 30 days, and somebody who's already doing keto and fasting. So there's more of an advanced protocol as well. And you could customize that to a carnivore approach.
Yeah, nice. Hey, I was thinking the same thing that this would be good for people whose family was just like giving them like like a straight up carnivore book because it's like a bridge too far. Like I'm not reading that. That's I can't, it's not doing that.
Right.
This just but just having that argument is just like, look, processed food is shit. I mean, this stuff is awful, and this stuff is toxic. We're poisoning ourselves. and just understanding that, even just getting that much, and just cutting out the processed food and the man-made foods, the seed oils that never don't exist in nature. You have to use the massive industrial chemicals and processes to actually just create this stuff. It's not just pressed oil from a plant. I mean, that they have some things that I don't think are the best, but at the same time, at least it's not that. At least it's not that this industrial product. This is the old saying that humans are the only animals smart enough to make our own food, the only ones dumb enough to eat it, and I think that's
Right.
completely true. It's that old adage that you're so sharp you'll cut yourself,
Mm.
and you're so clever, like, oh, look at all this stuff I figured out, and it ends up leading you down the very wrong path. You end up really hurting yourself, and I mean, it's clearly what we've done. We've invented foods, we've invented things that we call food that aren't food. This isn't food. We eat it. Just because you put it in your mouth and chew does not make it food. You can do that. You can do that with dirt. You can do it with feces. It doesn't make it food, right?
Right.
But so it's we have to understand that this stuff is hurting us. So even just that is is a huge step for people. And so yeah, like you say, like a sort of a gateway drug to
Yep.
something more. But even then, it's going to make a huge difference. Just getting rid of processed food. I have to say, I cannot imagine you as obese. I mean, you're such
Mm.
like a slender, fit guy. Like I can't picture that. I feel like you'd
Yeah.
be,
I'll text you some photos. You're right. Most people say the same thing, like, no way, you're obese. But yeah, dude, 250 pounds, 34% body fat. Now I'm
Mhm.
6'2". I carry it well, but I was classified as obese with those metrics. Now I'm a lot healthier. I actually feel the healthiest I've ever been at age 40, much healthier than I was 24. But yeah, dude, I was obese for 20 plus years of my life. So look, if I can do that, if I could overcome it and lose the weight and keep it off, anybody can do it. I know I was young when I did it, but the body's amazing. There's some things you can do. You just got to remove the interference. It will heal itself.
Hey everyone, really happy to announce a new sponsor for the show and for everybody down in Australia, Stockman Steaks, who are delivering high quality grass fed and finished pasture raised beef and other meats, flash frozen and vacuum sealed to your door, something that I've been enjoying a lot of myself recently as well. They also have a great range of specialty items such as high fat keto mince and carnivore beef and organs mince with liver, kidneys, and beef heart as well. So use code Chaffee today for a free order of beef mince or another specialty gift along with your order at stockmansteaks.com.au, and I'll see you over there. Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. And to that, talk about those things as like a gateway and in transitioning and trying new things. You did an experiment, and that's something that we were talking about before we started recording, was that you're not dogmatic about these things. You go in and out of keto, but you're always eating clean food. You're always eating healthy. You don't go eat in and out of eating junk food, things like that. So it's always clean
Correct.
food. It's always whole foods. And but you did do an experiment where you went full carnivore, didn't you? Can you tell
I
us about
did,
that?
yeah. And over the last few years, probably since 2018, I would do like 30 days of carnivore, 45, 60. And
Yeah.
then last year I decided to do, all right, I'm going to do 90 days and 90 days straight. I'm going to test as well and get some data. And of course, this is my own personal N of one experience, but I wanted to get some data. So on day one, I did comprehensive lab work. Of course, I did my thyroid panel, full thyroid panel. I did my full lipid panel with the NMR, looking at particle sizes, inflammatory markers, hormones, CBC. I mean, full blood work. And then I also did a stool test on day one to look at my gut microbiome and diversity and different bacteria relationships. I put on a continuous glucose monitor, although there was nothing really exciting there because my glucose levels were just stable the whole time. Yeah, exactly. There was nothing really exciting there. And then I, of course, looked at my Aura Ring stats, looking at heart rate variability, deep sleep, REM sleep, how many times I was getting up at night compared to when I was not doing carnivore. And I went full in 90 days. And it was interesting. There was a lot of interesting moving pieces here. The first thing that I noticed personally, without looking at the lab work, was that I started to get better sleep. My deep sleep and REM sleep was increased. I was waking up less times throughout the night. Not that I was waking up a ton, but it cut that dramatically. So I was getting more restful sleep. I had more energy. What was interesting, Anthony, I already thought I was pretty lean when I started doing this, but I lost 16 pounds in 90 days
Oh,
and
yeah,
6% body fat, but the muscle mass stayed the same. I have the in-body
yeah,
scans. The muscle mass didn't go down. It wasn't muscle, it was mostly body fat. So my
nice.
abs were just more visible during that time frame. I didn't realize I needed to do that, but my body, I guess, needed to do that. The most interesting part was the stool test because when I got my results back from day one, the results came in about 3 weeks into the carnivore experience experiment. And the report showed that my diversity was average. My gut microbiome diversity was average. It wasn't poor, it wasn't amazing, it was average. And the recommendations on that lab report was to eat less keto foods, less meat, more plants, more vegetables, more polyphenol rich foods, pretty much like a predominantly like plant-based diet with a lot of fiber to increase the diversity. Well, I did the complete opposite because I'm doing carnivore. So I went 90 days and then I retested that same stool test. And you would think, not you, Anthony, but most people would think that, man, your gut's going to look destroyed. You did the exact opposite of what most gut microbiome specialists would say to do, including this company. And actually, my diversity increased after 9 days, 90 days, excuse me. My keystone bacteria, I had five keystone bacteria show up on day 90 that did not show up on day one. I had seven core bacteria show up on day 90 that did not show up on day one. Akkermansia increased. The bacteria relationships were improved as well. So everything in my gut microbiome improved after 90 days doing the complete opposite. So I want to get your thoughts on that, and then I want to share a little bit about the blood work and what I saw with that.
Yeah, well, I think it's fantastic. Having that point of data and people, well, it's an N of one, but well, we have N of one times 10,000 at this point because a lot of people are doing this and finding very similar results. And the argument is, well, you're eating a bunch of processed food and garbage, and now you change it. No, you were eating a very clean diet. You're eating very, I
Right.
mean, for over a decade, you were eating
Yep.
a very
Correct.
clean omnivorous diet, including meat, but also including a lot of fibrous plants. And that's the whole point. They say, oh, you should eat a lot of high fiber plants because that fiber is so good for the microbiome. Um, Compared to what? Because if you're comparing it to the standard American diet that most people are eating, then changing that to a more whole food approach, getting some fruits and vegetables that have fiber in it, you're not just adding those things that have fiber, you're also replacing the other garbage things that maybe aren't so good. And so you have an improved microbiome and we don't know all that much about the microbiome. I work with a guy in Perth. He's an ICU specialist. He's an intensivist, and but he's also a researcher. I mean, that's his main gig is doing research on the microbiome. He has over 200 peer-reviewed publications on the microbiome. And I was talking to him about this and what he knows. And it was just basically it was just like, yeah, I think it's really big. I think once we figure out what the hell's going on and all this stuff, I think we're going to really understand a lot more about human disease. And it was just like this is
Wow.
the guy with over 200 publications. He's saying we don't know jack,
Yeah.
but I think it's big. And once we figure it out, then I think it's going to be very very telling. But that I mean that's from a horse's mouth. I mean this guy is one of the world's experts in this, and he's saying clearly like, we just don't understand this well enough at the moment. But I think it's very important. And so the idea that we just know perfectly how to manipulate this stuff and oh yeah, to add more fruits and vegetables and fiber and all that sort
Take
of stuff.
probiotics, and that'll solve everything.
That's it. Yeah, except that those studies have come out now that probiotics are actually horrible and don't do any good. I spoke to a
Useless.
researcher. Yeah, he's a gastroenterologist down in Perth, and he actually did his lab was hired by a probiotics company to do a large scale study because there were shorter, like very small, like 6-person something like that study. Not powered high enough. You can't get any real information off that, showing that their product was good. So they're like, oh yeah, look, studies have shown. But now they knew that was bullshit, so they wanted to get like a bigger study, and so they hired this guy to do that. I met him at a conference, and he was saying that so it was a large scale, well designed study, and it showed that like no, it doesn't help. It wasn't any good, and and so they were getting ready to publish it, and they got letters from the lawyers saying that like if you publish that, we're going to sue you. Like this is our property,
Wow.
and we paid for it, we own it. You can't use it. And so he's like, All right.
Awful.
So the abstract is out there, but
Mm.
they couldn't publish the actual full study. But subsequently, there have been publications showing the exact same thing. So this is reproducible. But this doesn't really do much. You know, the other thing too is that people forget that there are entire civilizations that eat this way or eat like a more natural animal-based sort of diet, like the Inuit and the Maasai. I don't know if they've studied the Maasai guts, but and they get no fiber. But there have been some on the Inuit, and they've actually shown a very diverse and healthy microbiome. So I would imagine that if you're eating what you're supposed to eat, you're going to have the microbes and microbiome that you're supposed to eat, just like the oral biome, a very different oral biome when you eat this way too. You don't get cavities as such, and other sorts of things. Animals in the wild, they've got teeth, they've got all these bacteria in and around them that are not causing harm, right? Because they're appropriate to them and that species. They don't have dentists. They're not, sterilizing their mouth every day, every time after they eat. And yet, they're the only animals that don't have teeth right out. We're the only, they all don't have their teeth right out. We all have our teeth right out,
Mm.
except the ones living in the wild that don't have dentists and don't have people telling them, well, you have to eat this way or whatever.
Right.
Fine. Some that eat more sugar. That was an interesting one, looking at the Hadza who eat more honey. And the men who are out there getting more honey, they actually have worse teeth than the women because women get less honey because they don't bring as much back. They eat it while they're out. And so that could be something there too. But you know, the thing is that when you're it's interesting you say, well, you got these new species and strains.
Yeah.
And and so why is that? You know, I think it's the oral biome. I think that the bacteria in your mouth do change, and every bite that you're chewing up, bacteria from your mouth do get in that food and go down in with that bolus of food. Now, if you're just drinking a probiotic or something like that, or you just eat spoonfuls of yogurt, that's going to go in your stomach acid, and that's all going to get destroyed by and large. But if you're eating it with the food, it could work in. This is theoretical. Could work in, but how else is it doing it? Work into the food and sort of get mixed into the middle of that bolus of food, and sort of like a Trojan horse, be able to sort
Mm.
of get a few of those by the guards,
Interesting.
And so that's what I would expect is happening because otherwise, maybe they are there, but they're just in such small supply they didn't show up on the microbiome test. That's possible too, but
Yep.
it's sort of comes down to one of those two, unless you got like a fecal transplant you're not telling us about, you
Yeah,
know?
I didn't do that.
Yeah,
Although I'm not opposed to it, but I didn't do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's interesting. Or the oral microbiome. That makes sense. I also think maybe the stress, like it was a dramatic, well, not a dramatic change for me because I was eating mostly clean, as you mentioned, but I did switch to no carbohydrates, no plants, and I was having that before. So there was an adaptation period. So maybe the stress could have forced the bacteria to multiply or increase the
yeah.
diversity. Because I know there's studies that show fasting does it, that fasting increases diversity because of the stress. I think maybe that I shifted into a 90 straight days, the stress, the positive stress, of course, might have contributed to the diversity as well. That was one of my thoughts.
Yeah, well, and fasting too, what's interesting about that is that it does the same sort of thing in principle as eating, like a more, just clean, call it an elimination diet, but a straightforward diet like a carnivore diet, where you're breaking down and absorbing 98+% of the meat that you're eating. So very little is getting through there, and it's only getting through what is, what I feel is biologically designed for us. And so, the microbes eat, what we eat, and but the thing is too is that if you're eating a bunch of fiber, a bunch of plants, a bunch of those things you can't digest, you can't break down, those will get into the colon, and then that will propagate and support other bacteria that wouldn't be able to sort of come to dominance in that environment otherwise because they wouldn't have like the rich food supply and resources. And so fasting is going to so doing an elimination diet, if you want to call it that, like carnivore, you're getting rid of a lot of things, And so that's going to select for certain bacteria, but also fasting, you're also eliminating a lot of these sorts of things. And so
True.
all of those same bacteria that will be selected out because they don't have enough resources, they're all going to go away. And these other ones that can survive in that environment will come up too. So that's interesting as well. And I just really like that you found these improvements after over a decade of really healthy eating by, by anybody's standard besides a vegan. And that you were eating clean, whole foods, being
Correct.
very, very careful about, what you ate and how you ate, doing, fasting, periodically, very slim, very healthy, all these different, biomarkers, showing that. And then you went to carnivore and you found other improvements as well on top of that. It was exactly what I found. I've never eaten processed junk food. We would occasionally get something like that. I mean, I can probably count on one hand how many times I've had KFC in my life.
Wow.
You know,
Wow.
now if you say about Popeye's chicken, it's going to be more than that. It's probably two hands, but it's not all that much. But either way, when I went and I was already, I just noticed that eating carbs when I ate anything with carbs, my back hurt. And it's just like
Mm.
I didn't like my back hurting. It was just like in pain. I was like, all right, that's weird. I'm just gonna avoid that stuff. And so I was just eating just vegetables and lean meat. You're supposed to eat lean meat and not that much. I was trying to slim up. And a lot of vegetables, not a lot of meat. So I was plant-based, right? But I did feel good. It wasn't great. Like I was fully inflamed, couldn't lose weight, tons of water weight, tired all the time, stomach hurt all the time, was always hungry. I just didn't feel good. And then, when I flipped and just dropped all the plants, all the vegetables, and went from eating a little bit of lean meat to a buttload of fatty meat, that it just changed everything. And
Mm.
so, the argument is that the only benefits that carnivores get is just that contrast from going from processed food to dropping the processed food. It's completely made up, but that has to be true for their ideology to work. And so they just say that they state that without any evidence being asked for or provided. And then people believe that just because, oh well, this guru that I know and love, they say that, so it must be true, and
Mm.
it needs to be true, or else I'm living a lie. And so it's very easy to believe those lies, but it's not true. And it's just like I never did that, you weren't doing that, and we saw these improvements in those sorts of ways. So yeah, I really like that people are showing that again and again, that it's not just about the processed food. The processed food is horrible. But it's not just about that. That actually there are benefits even on top of that.
Exactly. Yeah. And me and you are perfect examples of that. We were already eating healthy and
Mm.
we got more benefits going to an animal-based approach. I know I sure did. And ever since I did that 90-day experiment, I've been doing more mostly carnivore. My current routine has been actually Monday through Saturday, I am full on carnivore, and Sunday I get out with more of a low carb approach. That works for me personally. So that I've been doing that ever since, and I feel incredible. Like I said, 4 years old, and I feel the healthiest I've ever felt in my life. What was interesting too, though, Anthony, was the lab work. Now, of course, when I did my labs, I was pretty healthy on day one. Nothing like my C-reactive protein was under zero point 0.5 on day one, and also on day 90. Homocysteine was single digits. My fasting insulin was 3.2 and then 3.1. So it was already insulin sensitive. But so my labs were great. The most interesting thing though on the labs was the lipid profile. And for those who are interested, by the way, I made a whole YouTube video where I show all my lab work. I show the gut test. I even had Dr. Philip Avadia review the lab work and others, and we kind of interpret. It's like an hour video, so you could just go to YouTube and type in Ben Azadi Carnivore. It's usually the first video that pops up. But with the lipids, my total cholesterol was already high, according to normal standards, on day one. It was around, if I remember correctly, it was over 300 on day one, my total cholesterol, because I was doing keto. On day 90, it went to 450 total cholesterol, 300-ish to 450. My LDL was around, I believe, 150 on day one or 200, somewhere around there. But on day 90, it went to 350, 350. My HDL was optimal both times, over 60 both times. Triglycerides were under 70 both times. Nothing to look at there. But with the LDL, right, 350, right? So I got the particle sizes done because it's not just as you talk about total LDL. It's about, all right, what percentage of that LDL is pattern B, the small sticky variety that's not good, and what percentage is pattern A, large fluffy. That's absolutely really important. And the majority of my LDL particles were, of course, the large, fluffy, healthy variety. I had a very small percentage, optimal percentage of the small, sticky, right? But if I didn't get all those panels done and I simply just looked at my total LDL, total cholesterol, and my doctor, if I didn't understand this and my doctor would interpret it, they would think I'm going to have a heart attack. I got to get you on a statin right away. Wouldn't you agree, Anthony?
Oh, a lot, yeah, most of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it is funny. You know, it is starting to change, and some of it's changing just from in the opposite direction than it really should be. But sometimes it has to go that way because a lot of people like yourself, coming in and they're extremely healthy, they're doing really well, and then all of a sudden they get these cholesterol numbers, and the doctor goes, "You're gonna die. I mean, you're gonna get a heart attack this week if you don't do something about this." And they truly believe that because that is how they were trained,
Yes.
and they are advocating for you. They do believe that this is the best thing for you is to correct this. I don't agree with them, but that is what they believe, and so they are coming from most of them are coming from a genuine place. There are others that I have my doubts about, but from like people's day-to-day doctor, by and large, will be coming from a good place. Um, and a lot of those, especially the ones that are honest with themselves, when they see a patient like yourself come in and be like, "This is crazy," but they're seeing like you're crazy healthy otherwise, and everything's really
Yeah.
good. They're
Inflammation is
like,
low, insulin is all, A1Cs, I didn't mention it was 5.1. Yeah, everything looked great.
yeah, and then and they say, okay, well, look, we need to get like some imaging, because cholesterol is not a disease. Atherosclerosis is a disease. And so they say, okay, well, this is going to be building up plaque. So we should be able to see this grow. And so you get a scan, all of a sudden it's zero. You have zero CAC. You have zero plaque on a coronary angiogram. Carotid ultrasound looking at the intimal thickness, and it is 0, 0, 0. And they're like, I don't know what this is. I don't know how to explain that. The
Mm,
ones that are inquisitive, they want to know why. And they want to go, okay, that's interesting. And you're telling me that you come across this. Okay, this is saying that, okay, yeah, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that research that you're referring to. My mom's doctor was like that. And she was just like, I'd be really interested to see, the research that your son has been doing, because it's like
great.
she reversed her diabetes in 2 months. She's like, this doesn't happen. This has never
Wow.
happened in my whole career. And my mom's doctor was a very bright lady. She was an MD, PhD from Harvard, had a PhD in biochemistry from Harvard, and MD there as
Wow.
well. And so, she's no slouch. And so she had that inquisitive nature saying like, what the hell did you do? What the hell happened? This doesn't happen. How the hell was it? And then she, had a talk with my mom and she was very interested. She's like, I'd really like to see this research. And so I went and talked to her, sent her a bunch of stuff and, the rest is history. But, um, there are some people that are coming around to this. Even people in this space like Dr. David Unwin in the UK, really nice guy. He's put out a lot of papers on this because he has a lot of patients and he's publishing his patient data. And at first he was getting attacked, roundly attacked, but he saw this work with his patients. And one of his patients came in and he was doing the classic thing of all his colleagues were doing to him, which was, oh, you have to be on diabetes medication, you have to do this, you have to do this. His patient basically hadn't filled her metformin prescription in like 10 months. And he was just like, oh, okay, well, that's not good. I'm going to have to call her in and have a talking to her and say, hey, you need to be better about your diabetes medication. She came in, she'd lost a ton of weight, she was super healthy, and she was pissed. She had a bone to pick with him.
Mm,
And she said, the reason I haven't been taking my metformin is because I don't need to anymore. I don't have diabetes anymore. My blood sugar is completely normal because I found this low carbohydrate approach. And you never told me that eating carbohydrates would turn into sugar and that would raise my blood sugar. You never told me that. I don't think that you're are you, how are you an actual doctor? You don't even know that that eating carbohydrates raise your blood sugar. And that's a horrible idea in a diabetic who's trying to control their blood sugar. And so they, through their own, inquisitive nature, they just stopped eating carbs, and their blood sugar just came down, 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 and they reversed their own diabetes. And he said that, when you have a patient tell you that, it's like, are you even a doctor? He's just like,
Wow.
you need to pay attention and you need to sit up and listen. And he's like, okay, I may have missed something big here. I need to find out what it is. And so then he started looking into it, and there are just thousands of studies on ketogenic diets, large scale randomized controlled trials in humans and animals
Wow.
showing the massive benefits of ketogenic diets to human health, and animal health even in for with discrete endpoints and for specific medical issues. And it's the most robustly studied diet that is in the world. And it has the most data behind it, but it doesn't have a product behind it. There's no multi-trillion dollar company behind it that stands to profit from this, like you do from the food and drug companies. And so there's no multi-billion dollar marketing team behind this, pushing this out to everyone, getting it in the medical schools, getting it in the residency programs, teaching it to endocrinologists who are treating diabetes, and going to these big conferences and things like that, sponsoring them, and getting educational sort of things out on the news, and being able to pay for spots on CNN or 60 Minutes, like that lady that came out, saying that no, obesity is
Yeah.
100% genetic, and there's
Yeah.
nothing you can do about it, all that sort of nonsense. And it turns out that person's on the payroll for Ozempic. And this is just what these companies do. A buddy of mine, my roommate from medical school, he ended up doing his residency in radiology at Yale. So Yale trained interventional radiologist. And now he does slightly different work. And he was on like a morning talk show sort of thing, sort of in his area, and he's talking about like the work he was doing for that company, which is owned by something larger. And he was talking about the benefits of this procedure that they do. And I was like, dude, that was really cool. That's awesome that they brought you on there. It's like how'd that end up going? It's just like, oh, the company just set it up. Yeah, they just pay them, to come on. It's advertising. So they pay them to bring me on to talk about what we do so people find out about it
Hmm.
so that they, can come and get business. That's how that's done. And so all the time you see like a doctor go, oh, doctor's coming in talking about this new procedure and this new thing, that, and the other. They are paying to do that. And so, if there's no benefit behind that, there's no money making operation on the other end of that, people aren't going to spend their own private money to say, hey, we need to get this information out there. It has to actually garner actual real life interest, and that's starting to happen. You're starting to see that
Yeah.
sort of thing, but it's a lot harder, because you can pay to get propaganda out there real quick.
Oh yeah.
And it's much more difficult, you know, doing it the other way around.
Yeah, well said. And there's a shift happening, and it's exciting to talk about this and see what's happening out there with the propaganda. Yeah, in the book, I talk about how important your environment is and how your environment determines your thoughts, your belief system, and essentially your actions that you take or don't take. And of course, in the United States, at least in 2020, about 75% of all TV commercials were funded by Big Pharma. And out of the 195 countries in the world, only the United States and New Zealand actually allow for Big Pharma to market directly on to consumer on the television. And I don't watch TV, but when I have dinner with my mom on Thursdays, her television's on and I see it. It's one Big Pharma commercial after another. It's just brainwashing us to believe we are deficient in something in order to feel better, but we're not deficient. We don't have these symptoms and disease because of a lack of this medication. There's something else going on. There's a cause. And there's a lot of money in propaganda, and the keto piece is interesting because you're right. There are incredible studies that I put in chapter 7 of my book, Why Keto is the Answer to Metabolic Freedom is the name of the chapter. There's several studies showing what it does for diabetes reversal. I mean, incredible. 53%, some over 60%. There are no pharmaceuticals that touch what keto can do for things like type 2 diabetes. And you're right, you can't put it into a pill. Yeah, you could sell exogenous ketones. It's not the same thing. But what makes keto different than any other diet is that keto technically is not a diet. It's a metabolic process. So it's not going away. It's not a fad. It's just a process we're all designed to use. That's why it's so powerful. Yeah, you can eat a diet to get into that metabolic process, but we're all designed to burn fat. And 93% of people that are metabolically unhealthy, I call them being on a keto deficiency. They forgot how to burn fat. Keto is the way. It's the first step towards changing your metabolism. And I love how it's gotten so many people into a carnivore diet as well. And I think a lot of people don't understand that when you're doing carnivore, you're also using ketones. You're primarily in ketosis, unless you're having a bunch of protein in the rare scenarios that it creates enough gluconeogenesis to kick you out. But carnivore is keto too, because you're going to be eating mostly protein and fat, and you're going to be using ketones. It's just kind of like an enhanced version of a traditional keto diet. So I love keto. One of the main reasons why I love it is because of what it does for mitochondrial health. We know ketones signal to the mitochondria to create mitochondrial biogenesis, which creates more energy, more ATP, at the same time lowers inflammation. And the brain has the most mitochondria. The heart is loaded with mitochondria, the testicles, the ovaries. So these are the cells that are really going to benefit from being in a state of ketosis. It's one of my favorite tools that I use on myself and on my clients. It's really powerful when it's done right. And I always like to teach people that it's more of a metabolic process than it is a diet. And it's not going away. It's not a fad. It's a fact. It's not new. It's nuanced. It's here to stay for forever because we've been doing it forever.
Well, I mean, that's it. I mean, how can eating meat and being in ketosis be a fad when we've been doing this since humans have been humans? I mean, that's
Right.
that's it's just like our biologically appropriate diet, what humans have been eating for the longest period of time. That's by definition not a fad. Fad is something that it's fly by night. It comes and goes. It's not very good and all that sort of stuff. This has stood the test of time.
Yeah.
And so this
Standard
is
American diet is actually more of a fad. That's what, 50,
100%.
60 years or so. That's really short time frame.
That's it. And we forget that just because like in most of our lifetimes, that's how people have been eating. We think that any derivation from that is the fad. But in fact, we're living in the fad and we're trying to get back out to what people have been eating, for a long time.
That's
You
right.
know, people really misunderstand ketogenic diets, and they misunderstand ketosis things, stress state, because in biochemistry we named this a fasting state and a fed state
Hmm.
because when it came down to when we could actually study biochemistry at a molecular level, everybody was eating carbohydrates or eating a mixed diet, and so they said, oh, when you eat it looks like this. And when you don't eat it, it looks like that. Oh, okay. So that's a stress state. If
Yeah.
you're lost in a desert, then this is what you kick into. This is your normal state because
Yeah.
normal to eat and things like that. Neglecting the fact that when you eat anything on earth except carbohydrates, it also looks like this so-called fasting state.
Right.
And so we think that fasting is you're starving, you're stressed, that's not good. So obviously being in that metabolic state is the stressed state. And that's an assumption and it's wrong. And in law, it'd be what's called assuming a fact that's not in evidence. And so that's never been proven. It's just an assumption that was made. And and it's not borne out by the evidence because now my niece actually she's pre-med now as well at the University of Washington, and she was telling me that she's taking biochemistry just last year that yeah, last year that they don't even call it a fed state and a fasting state anymore. They call it a carbohydrate metabolism and a non-carbohydrate metabolism, and that's much
Interesting.
more accurate. Um, so when you're in a non-carbohydrate metabolism, that's what we call ketosis. I think
Yes.
even that's a bit, it's not misnamed per se, but it's sort of a misleading name. You think ketosis, you think ketoacidosis, like, oh, that's
Yeah.
scary. Or
Yeah.
you think that it's only a product of the ketones. You said, well, I need to have my ketones be, 37 or else I'm not in
Yeah.
ketosis and I'm not getting the benefits. Really what it is, you're burning fat. You're in a
Yeah.
fat burning metabolism or you're not.
That's
And
what I call
so
it. And yeah, sugar burner versus fat burner. That's pretty
that's
much
it.
it. Yeah.
And that's what it is. And so, I mean, the only real sugar burners out in the world, like actually, are like hummingbirds and bumblebees. I mean, that's sort of it. Things that drink nectar and stuff like that. But the vast majority of the rest of the animals out there are in a fat burning state and are in a so-called ketogenic fasting starvation state or something
Yeah.
like that. It's not a starvation state. That's just a natural state. Fat is our main storage form of energy. It is extremely efficient and effective. And glycogen for a 65 kilo individual with 6% body fat, maximal glycogen storage in their muscles and liver is about 2,400 kilocalories. That same 65 kilo individual, that's a small dude, right? So that's 150, 160 pounds, right? No, not even that, like 140, 150 pounds, right? So like slender guy,
Yeah.
6% body fat. That 6% body fat on that smaller guy has over 35,000 kilocalories of energy. So this is way more efficient. It's over 15 times the amount of energy. And so you get somebody who's, taller and bigger, it's just going to,
Ton of
expand
energy.
exponentially.
Yeah.
So you have nothing but energy. So this is a much more efficient way of storing energy. And so, that is just a natural storage form of energy. It's not just like just an emergency
A
situation.
survival, yeah,
That's
situation.
it. Yeah, all animals do this.
Yeah.
So 70% of animal species are carnivores. So they don't eat any carbs. They're not getting anything else. They're eating meat. They're eating fat.
Like
Okay.
my dog. Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. And my animals too. And and so they're getting that. So they're in that sort of ketogenic starvation state. They're in a fat burning state. So they're
Yeah.
eating meat, they're eating fat. They go for the fat first and they store that fat and they use that as energy because they may not get a meal every single day or
That's
five
right.
times a day or three meals and three snacks and all that other
Right.
nonsense and have your alarm wake you up every 2 hours from sleep to eat your
Like
gummy bears or something
like
like
a
that.
sumo wrestler.
Yeah, exactly. Some other whatever people are recommending these days to make them obese and sick.
Yeah.
And but then you look at herbivores, it's like, oh, but herbivores, they eat plants, and so they must be in a carb burning state. It's like, well, but when they break down fiber, they don't break it down into its constituent glucose molecules. The bacteria in their gut ferment it and break that down and actually convert that into short chain fatty acids, which are 100% saturated. And then those bacteria die off and they get absorbed as protein and nutrients. So the vast majority of calories that they're getting are again from fat and protein, secondarily from protein. 70 to 80% of calories of an herbivore that are absorbed in the gut are from saturated fat.
Wow.
So
That's interesting. I didn't know that. That's
yeah,
fascinating.
gorillas get 70% calories from fat, from saturated fat, and the rest from
Wow.
protein, a very small amount from carbohydrates. Cows get nearly 80%. And and in fact, when you look at primates, when you look at the percentage of calories from fat, there's a direct correlation from percentage of calories of fat to brain size. Gorillas have the smallest brains per body mass, and they have the small. It's actually 70% calories from fat is actually the smallest amount.
Hmm.
And so as the primates get bigger and bigger brain, they get actually more calories from fat in their
That makes
absorption.
sense.
Yeah, and
That
then and
absolutely
then we're
makes
just
sense.
going the other way. No, only get 10% of your calories from saturated fat. And I
Yeah.
was like, all
Oh
right, well,
gosh.
yeah, I know what that's doing to your brain.
Yeah. Oh my God. And all of your hormones, right?
Exactly.
How much time do we have left? Because I want to see if I could get into the insulin piece real quick. How much time do we have?
We got time. That's fine.
Okay, cool. Because we were talking about keto and the fat burning versus sugar burning. Insulin is the switch that allows you to go from, burning sugar to burning fat. And that is, I believe that high levels of insulin it's the first domino to fall that leads to all these metabolic conditions. It starts with pre-diabetes, maybe high blood pressure, some weight gain, abdominal fat, visceral fat, and then it trickles into diabetes, which then opens up a whole host of different diseases like cancer, heart disease, kidney failure, et cetera. And a lot of people are not testing their fasting insulin. And I referenced a few studies, one of them being the Whitehall study, two, and a few others showing that you could have full blown insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia for on average 6 to 14 years with none of your blood sugars changing at all, meaning A1C looks perfect, fasting insulin looks perfect. Meanwhile, you're full blown insulin resistant because your pancreas is just producing massive amounts of insulin to shuttle out that excess glucose until those receptor sites go deaf to the screens, and then all of a sudden you are diagnosed with prediabetes and diabetes. So I encourage people in the book, and I know you talk about this, go get a fasting insulin test done, a blood test that you can do with finger prick. There's some companies that do that, or at a lab. It's cheap. Sometimes you got to do it out of pocket, but it's not expensive. And you want that to be in the single digits. You don't want to look at the standard reference range on that report because it's like 3 to 25. You want to be between 3 and 7 single digits. That shows good insulin sensitivity, because you could have perfect A1C, which you're probably testing, and maybe a fasting glucose that looks good, but full-blown insulin resistance, which is leading you towards metabolic syndrome, and you have no idea if you're not testing that fasting insulin.
Hey guys, just want to take a second to thank our sponsor, Carnivore Bar. I don't promote many products because honestly, all you need to be healthy is to just eat meat. For those times that you're out hiking, road tripping, or stuck at work and you want a nutritious snack that is just meat, fat, and salt if you want it, the Carnivore Bar is a great option. So I like this product not because it's just pure meat, but also because I want the carnivore market to thrive as well. And the more we support meat-only products, the more meat-only products there will be available in the mainstream. So if this sounds like something you'd like to get behind, check it out using my discount code Anthony to get 10% off, which also applies to subscriptions, giving you 25% off total. All right, thanks guys.
Yeah, totally agree. I always test fasting insulin on all my patients, so and use that as a to to qualify the HbA1c and the fasting insulin and things
Yeah,
like that.
smart.
Yeah, but it's not something that gets taught. Because the thing is that I think it doesn't get taught because it doesn't have a product at the end of it. That's just like everything else we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So, we're not going to get trained this way in medical school or in residency because there has to be a product at the end of that. So why are you testing for insulin if you're not going to do anything with it? And that's taught too. Don't order a scan, don't order a test unless it's going to change management. And that's good practice. But this should change your management. It's just what are you going to change it with? The stuff is coming from the drug company. So as soon as your blood sugar is going up, oh sure, I'm on
Yeah,
blood sugar lowering medication, but if the insulin's up, well, we don't have any medication that just lowers insulin.
it's
So
true.
there's nothing to do there, and the cat's out of the bag at this point, but they're trying to stuff it back in as much as they can. Um, and because they don't want people to understand that low carbohydrate, therapeutic carbohydrate restriction is a known remedy for insulin resistance and even pre-diabetes and diabetes. So, you see that warning flag. So I see people and their insulin, their blood sugar's fine, their HbA1c is fine, but their fasting insulin's 35.
Yeah,
And it's just like, look, this is the shot across the bow. This is really
right.
we've caught this early, before this has caused too much of a problem, but your body's struggling right now, and the wheels are starting to fall off. These are cracks in the dam that are going to blow the whole thing if we don't
Mm,
fix this straight away. And it's very important, and most doctors don't know that, and they wouldn't know what to do with it anyway. They wouldn't understand that
right.
if you just do therapeutic carbohydrate restriction, intermittent fasting. I mean, however you want to do it. I mean, there's a lot of ways to skin a cat,
Yeah.
but it's there are interventions that you can do. It's just that we're not taught them in medical school, and so I think it's very important. We have to educate people, and we have to educate ourselves as clinicians, and hopefully, these sorts of books and discussions will, doctors in the audience will hopefully learn this as well, and if they don't, then the patients going to their doctors saying, "Hey, why don't you know this?"
Mm.
That sort of sparked them, sort of like did with Dr. Unwin.
Yeah, I love that story.
Mm.
It's true. Like, these days, individuals who listen to your podcast, read the books that are out there, they understand more about nutrition than their conventional, most of these conventional doctors, because they're not taught this information. I mean, you lived it yourself. With the insulin piece, I mean, we could save so much money in terms of the United States spend on healthcare if we had everybody test fasting insulin. Because I know you've had Andy Schoonover on your podcast, who's also a good friend of mine from Join Crowd Health, and I learned from him where you spend $4.6 trillion per year on healthcare in the US, which would be the fourth largest GDP in
Yeah.
the world, and one out of every $4 are spent on diabetes, primarily type 2. And think about the fact that it's preventative, first of all, it's reversible. And if everybody just got a fasting insulin, like it would dramatically reduce those numbers. About 50 to 60% right now of Americans are diabetic or pre-diabetic. And once you have diabetes, I was sharing offline with you, right? Once you have diabetes, what happened with my dad, it's not the diabetes that's ending people's lives. It's really rare to die from type 2 diabetes. There are diabetic comas and rare exceptions, but it's what the diabetes leads to. It's the cancer, the heart disease, the stroke, the kidney failure. It's the diabetes that leads to all of that. And there's a study I referenced in the book making the point on how destructive high levels of blood sugar are inside of your body. Of course, we measure that with an A1C, which is giving you roughly a 90-day average of your blood sugars. And the study referenced that if your A1C is 7.5% or higher, which is full-blown diabetic, every year it's at that level, they estimate approximately 100 days come off your lifespan. So if it's at that level for 15 years, 7.5% or higher, you lose about 4 years off your lifespan. That's how destructive high levels of blood glucose is. It's not the salt that's raising your blood pressure, by the way. It's the high levels of blood sugar. It lowers nitric oxide, creates vasoconstriction. Then your heart has to pump harder. And that's what raises blood pressure, right? So it's not the salt, it's not the burger, it's the bread that the burger's in. It's just, I know your audience gets this, and I wrote the book so your friends could get this. So get the book for your friends so they could understand the messaging here because sometimes it just goes on deaf ears. I've seen that all the time with my friends.
Yeah, it can for sure. I think, the thing is that I think you touched on, I think the main obstacle that we have here is that, we could save massive amount, like you said, like $4.6 trillion a year we spend on healthcare and things like that.
Yeah.
And we could save a massive amount. I mean, in the billions, if not in the trillions. I mean, hundreds of billions, if not the
Yes.
trillions, by just doing little simple things like that. Um, which is why we've got an uphill battle because what we're saving in money, we're saying, hey, we're going to save all this money, we're going to save hundreds of billions of dollars. That's coming directly out of someone else's profit
Mm,
margin.
yeah.
So now you've got a multi-trillion dollar industry that wants to stay a multi-trillion dollar industry. And now you're threatening that multi-trillion dollar industry, and they've got the ad campaigns, they've got the marketing budget. And so that's why you're seeing just all these attacks on carnivore, on keto, on all these influencers being paid, and we know a lot of these influencers are being paid, have been paid, and haven't correctly disclosed that fact, and have had FTC warnings and things like that. Multitudes of people have been caught with this stuff. I saw a recent one where some lady who had like 1.5 million followers, something like that. But it was a very manufactured account. I think this sort of looks like sort of like a paid person to get put up here because the account is barely a year old, and it was professional videos from day one, and it was getting almost no views, and all of a sudden just go crazy, viral,
Mm,
whatever. She got 1.5 million followers, and she's been around for less than a year. So, it could have been organic, just had a professional start and just really made a go at it. Very well could have been. These things are very well scripted, very well edited, lighting, all that sort of stuff. So either way, it's very well done. But it was all plant-based. It was all
mm.
plant-based. Here's my recipe for like plant-based, nut ball, protein ball sort of thing. And it's just all plant. I went through a lot of these videos. And I didn't see a single time she was cooking eggs or like making anything like that. And so it's a sort of fitness page. And then more recent post is about I tried the carnivore diet because I wanted to get abs, and I totally got abs, but then the problems set in. I got PCOS, I got sick, and I got acne, and she's just showing pictures of her in the hospital with like a drip in her hand and
Wow.
things like that. I'm like,
Wow.
um, no one needs IV fluids or medications for PCOS. That's not no one has been hospitalized for PCOS. That's not a thing, or acne. I mean, these are just
Yeah.
not things. And so, and then it was just like, yeah, I just feel so strongly about this, because I just don't want anyone else to suffer like I did. It's just not worth it just to get a bit of abs or whatever. And it's just like, no one's saying this is for abs. Everyone's saying this is for health and improving health. And she said
Wow.
that she did it for 8 weeks. She did carnivore for 8 weeks, and it just really destroyed her health. And then After that, it's taken 12 weeks or 3 months, 5 months total for her, to get back to where she is now. But she's like, oh, it's still healing. It's still a work in progress. The page has only been around for a year. There's not 5 months of carnivore and then carnivore, recovery content on there. There isn't a single thing. There isn't a single post about her trying carnivore, doing carnivore in the hospital, or recovering or having acne. This is the only thing. It's the only one. And so, I'm just calling bullshit on this,
Yeah,
right?
that is highly suspicious, bro.
The next day that she put this out, other large accounts, some of whom we know and recognize and are known to have been paid by processed food industries and been warned by the FTC that this was not acceptable in the way that they declared it. Um, they came out the next like day or 2 days after with a fully scripted, perfectly edited thing about, oh, look at this and all these damages. Oh, this is why this is destroying her hormones and blah, blah, blah. And, this is so dangerous or whatever. And they were published on the same day. So people sent me these things. They sent people, these people's responses. And I looked at the date. They were posted on the exact same day, which was a day or two after the original post. And I was just like, that screams coordinated effort,
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know. And it's not expensive to do. I mean, these people have a price. We know that they do, and they already have a bone to pick with this sort of thing anyway. It's not going to even need a high price, But it's just you see this coordinated effort. Obviously, seeing it attack pieces in different media outlets. I had a lady from The Guardian who wanted to interview me about the carnivore diet, and she completely like just did a complete hack job of this. Tried to word things in a way that I was an alternative medical practitioner. If you look at the
Wow.
definition of that, you're talking about acupuncturists and chiropractors and things like that. Wouldn't didn't call me. It just said Anthony Chaffee, and then Chaffee. It didn't call me to me by my title as doctor. Didn't say that I was a medical doctor. You're trying to really dismiss and diminish me as and my credentials in order to dismiss and diminish my arguments. And then had somebody else come in who had some ridiculous argument about how, well, Neanderthals, we found some seeds in their teeth. So obviously they're eating a whole bunch of grains. Like, yeah, idiot. Like the ones from like super recently, not from 300,000 years ago or a million years ago, you jackass, and not certainly the ones that are in the Arctic Circle during the ice ages, like you moron. So, I mean, it's just so stupid, but he was referred to as doctor. I mean, he's not even a medical doctor. He's like a PhD,
So ridiculous.
university lecturer, but he's Doctor so and so, and I'm a alternative medical practitioner, like, and all sorts of other things as well. And I ended up actually, writing an email to like the editor and as many people as I could tag in there, and I was just like, this is bullshit. I mean, this is bordering on slander now, and I'd have legal recourse to come after you for this sort of stuff. And so they actually changed a whole bunch of it, but they didn't change a lot of it. I just didn't bother to like go after him for the rest of it. And but yeah, we
Wow.
see this all the time. I mean, these things are completely paid and orchestrated, and you always get the most flack when you're above the target. And I think that's where we're at right now.
I agree. Wow, that's wild. But even with all of that propaganda, money, organization they have, I mean, the searches for the vegan diet is plummeting year after year. Beyond Meat
So,
burger stocks like plummeting, right? Searches for
yeah.
like carnivore and meat are increasing. So it's not working. I think our messaging is working better. This is a grassroots approach, and with the whole movement focus, I don't want to get political, but movement focused on metabolic health that's happening in America is incredible. So even with all that, they're still plummeting in terms of the vegan diet searches.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, and what they forgot too is that um, there's no bad press. All news is good news.
It's
And
true.
so, you're saying all these things about people. When I was on CNN Australia, we had hours of dialogue recorded. and they used about 5 minutes. It wasn't a bad 5 minutes. It was a decent clip from that. But then they had other things. They sort of lumped me in with all these other people. They're trying to sell supplements and alternative sort of whatever. In that interview, I explicitly said, hey, this is something that gets people off medications and away from supplements. You don't need supplements. You don't need expensive things to do. You just eat properly and your body works. And then they lump me in with all these people that are selling supplements and how that's a scam and all that sort of stuff. And it's just like, well, that's a bit dishonest, but either way, in even with only just that clip and not actually showing, the full discussion or more of the merits of our discussion, um, the people in the comments, not even like, carnivore people, these people that just saw it. I mean, they saw through that really quick. They're like, yeah, that guy who just eats meat, he looks way healthier than all of them, and he's the only guy not selling something.
Yeah,
you
that's
know?
awesome.
And so it's like a lot of those guys, like people who didn't even know me, didn't know about the carnivore diet. They were just like, I had a lot of people that started following me because of that. They're like, hey, I saw you on 60 Minutes. And I just thought that was like, they didn't give you enough time. I thought that was bullshit. And it made me look into it, which is like led me down this rabbit hole. I was like, oh wow, I think that's actually there's something there. So I think they forgot that cardinal rule of media. I mean, Barnum Bailey, if people weren't talking about him in the media, he would, under a pseudonym, make an attack articles on Barnum. He's PG Barnum. He's a jerk. He's a this. This is terrible. Just to create a controversy so that he kept people's names in his head.
Wow.
And they I think they messed up with that one.
Yeah, I think they did as well. You got the publicity. And yeah, I know you're a good dude. You actually care about people. You're not trying to push a product or you don't have a hidden agenda. You actually genuinely care about humanity and you're doing a great job teaching a lot of people, including myself. I learn from you
Nice.
all the time, bro.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And you're doing the same. I mean, we've talked a lot offline, and I think we really align in a lot of these things because, like, we've gone through things in our lives that we don't like, and we don't want that to happen again to other people. And so I really appreciate you and what you're doing and your new book. So thank you very much. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you. Thank you for letting me come on here and discuss it. I'll just share with your audience that
Mhm.
the book, we're giving away some bonuses for anybody who orders the book. It's an entire course for free on the metabolism that I developed, 12
That's
lessons on keto fasting and metabolic health. And we also have some exclusive interviews in that course with Dr. Jason Fung, Megan Ramos, Cynthia Thurlow, Dr. Daniel Pompa, and Gary Brecka. All that's for free.
nice.
If you, yeah, all of that's for free. All you have to do is go to metabolicfreedombook.com, order the book on either Amazon, Barnes& and Noble, Spotify. There's a whole bunch of different options, and then put your name, order number, and an email, and you're automatically sent the bonuses with the interviews. The book is available on hardcover, Kindle, and Audible. I narrated the Audible myself, and you could either
Nice.
yeah, it was a pain in the butt, by the way. You could pre-order it depending on when this comes out, but even if this is after the fact, if the book's already out, you could still go to that same website and get the bonuses. So it's metabolicfreedombook.com to get the book.
Well, make sure to put that in the description so everyone can look downstairs and check that out. And I encourage people to do check that out and read it themselves. Like I said, there's going to be some high level stuff there for people who've done this before, and also give a new look and an angle to help your arguments and your understanding of this. So when you're having these conversations with people in your life, they're saying, well, that's not true because blah 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 blah. You have more ammo. The more
Yeah.
the more educated you are on this, the more of both sides of the arguments that you understand, the better you're going to be able to argue your point or to come to a more nuanced approach with it as well. I mean, don't just believe what we believe just because we believe it. Look at that facts and evidence yourself and decide for yourself. And then when you thoroughly understand that sort of thing, then it's very easy to relay that to other people, and then give that to a friend or a family member who may need a little bit of help along. Ben,
Yeah,
thank you
well,
so
well
much. It's
said.
been an absolute pleasure to have you on.
It's an honor to come back, bro. And yeah, to your point, there's 274 citations in the book. So there's
There
references
we
to
go.
back up, any of the scientific claims that are made in the book.
Mhm.
Anthony, you're amazing, bro. I appreciate you. It's so cool to see, your YouTube channel take off and just
Oh, thanks,
your
man.
messaging take off. It's amazing. I love it, and it's just the starting point for you. I can't wait to read your book whenever you finish your book. So it's an honor, bro.
I got to do that. So
Get it done.
thanks, man. Well, I really appreciate it, man. And thank you all very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Please do go and follow Ben and look at his work and get his book and check it out as well at the link below. And if you like that, please do send this on to somebody you think would be helped and benefited by it, or leave a comment down below and click a like to try to get this out to more people. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.
Hey guys, thank you very much for taking the time out to listen to what I had to say. If you like it, then please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel and podcast. And if you're on YouTube, then please hit that little bell and subscribe, and that'll let you know anytime I have a new video out, which should be every week, if not more. And if you could share this with your friends, that would help me get the word out and let me know that you like what I'm doing. Thanks again, guys.